This is another Debate Talk for You radio public announcement. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers, plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk for You Radio.
Fringe check, download today. Fringes is a new mobile app designed to meet, mix, and post with Torah keepers like you. That's right. How pleasant is it for brethren to dwell together in unity? Bring it out. Fringes is available on Google Play and the App Store.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. Shalom, Mishpachah Wahabarim. Welcome to another segment from Debate Talk for You's show. This is the second quarter with your sister, Shan-T. Co-host for the night, Brother B.A. Ben Abraham. And tonight we have special guests in the house, woman of the way, Sister ONLEILOVE. And tonight we're going to have a discussion about prophetic whirlwind. This is Sister ONLEILOVE's ministry. She'll be talking about a few things she has coming up and a lot of the things she assists the community with. And we would love for you to call in with your questions or comments. The number is 319-527-6239. Once again, the calling number is 319-527-6239. Press the number 1 to talk. All right? So, without further ado, I'm going to allow my co-host to formally introduce himself, and then we're going to have our special guest to come on and formally introduce herself, and then we'll get right into this nice conversation, this nice dialogue. Praise the Most High. Brother B.A.
Yo, greetings to all. So, Brother B.A. Ben Abraham out of Sacramento, California. All praise to the Most High. In the name of his only anointed messenger known as Yeshua the Christ. I'm most definitely intrigued and anticipating this conversation this evening with the Sister ONLEILOVE, who I consider to be a factor in this community. That's a term we say in California. When we say someone's a factor, that means that this is an individual or person who bears a lot of responsibility and their reputation goes far. So I've always had respect for this sister, and I appreciate what she does. And I'm going to allow myself to be quiet and allow the elder to speak.
All right. Thank you for that, Brother B.A. Glad to have you on. Yes, Sister ONLEILOVE is definitely a factor out in these Israelite community streets here. You know, definitely she has the credibility, and we're going to give all praise and honor to the Most High for her and her diligence, her heart, her soul, her spirit, her love for the people. So, Sister ONLEILOVE, come on in.
So, shalom, family. Shalom, Sister Shan-T. Shalom, Brother B.A. It's good to be on with my SAC family. I get down with y'all with the family from Sacramento. One of the projects we're talking about today, I'm working with my girl Danielle from SAC on it. So when I've been in SAC, I've really liked the history of the Black Power history. So I'm really just blessed to be on with y'all today. Brother B.A., I'm blessed by your words, and you taught me a new saying from the West Coast, because I'm a New York City girl. So it's up from Brooklyn, like Brother Sal, which y'all could tell in his voice. But it's truly humbling to be on. And for all the family that's observing Purim right now, we want to just wish you a blessed Purim as you observe our sister, our elder, our ancestor Hadessa and how she didn't think it was robbery to speak up for her people, even though she ascended high. And so I really hope as we observe Purim that as we look at our Hebrew community today, when we see that our people need to be spoken up for, that we won't think it's robbery. And so that justice is a key part of Torah. And so as we talk about the different initiatives tonight, I just want to remind us not to just celebrate Purim, with parties and with outfits, but to really celebrate Purim and how we speak up against evil to protect our people, especially the most vulnerable around us.
Hallelujah. All right. This is going to be a blessed dialogue here. Sister Only Love, her contributions to the community, to the sisters, to our people still in the continent. It's definitely a blessing. We are delighted to have such a gem, such a jewel be in our midst, be in our presence. And I actually saw Sister Only Love. I didn't know it at the time when she did come to Sacramento some years back, the congregation that I used to attend. But, Sal, you have any announcements before we get into this thing?
Yes, brief announcements. This Friday we have a show for you guys. Make sure you tune in. We're going to have Brother Josh and Anonymous Hebrew here on Debate Talk Radio. Title of the show, David and Saul, Which Are You? David and Saul, Which Are You? They're going to have a Bible lesson right here on Debate Talk Radio. And on Monday, we're going to have the Hot Tea segment, and we're going to have special guest Zion Lex here for the Hot Tea, so make sure you call in. That's the show where you, the listening audience, can ask any question or comment live. We're going to have Zion Lex here right here on Debate Talk Radio on Monday. You can proceed.
All right, so it's the Only Love to pick it back up. What I was speaking of, your contributions to us here in America. However, you are actually physically able to get to the continent, get to our people directly over in the land, especially Nigeria. We talk about some things you got coming up. You want to talk about your dealings with the Hebrew family in Africa and some of the contributions you have to looking at their oral history, their migration patterns, their DNA, and how they have sufficient evidence and witness and testimony that they are linked to us over here in America, or even, the Israelites scattered abroad to the four corners of the earth. So, yeah, you can talk about the Hebrew family in the country.
Well, thank you, sis. That's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So before I dive into that, just to give a little background on how I got into this issue, so Prophetic Whirlwind Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny was founded 5 years ago, February 2014, after two church mothers from the Episcopal Church in the Union of Black Episcopalians saw how I was teaching online about the Hebrews in Africa and, our people in Scripture, and they set up 2 weeks of workshops, about 2 hours each, at Trinity Wall Street, the oldest church in New York City, a church that also dealt in the slave trade, for me to come and bring the truth. And they didn't sanction anything. And these are elderly Black Christian women. I want to call their name Mother Roz Hall and Mother Roberta Todd. And then they were like, do you have a website? And I said no, so I had to set up a website. Do you have a book? I said no, but then a few years later I signed a book deal. They kept pushing me, you're going to speak at this conference, that conference. And so we know how the mothers do. And they've, continued to support. And the purpose of Prophetic Whirlwind, the name, some people think I'm a prophetess, and I always have to joke and say, listen, it's not, Prophetic Whirlwind is not me, but Prophetic Whirlwind is the Ruach of Yah waking up his scattered people. And it was inspired by the Marcus Garvey speech, Look for Me in the Whirlwind, which he wrote from, I think, a Georgia prison when he was framed for fraud. And in that speech, which you can go on YouTube and hear people doing dramatic readings of it, he talks about who we are in Scripture, He talks about who Yahshua is, what Yahshua's color is. He talks about how, the Most High is going to redeem the children of Africa, which now we know many of those children and their diaspora are, biblical Hebrews. What many don't know is that Hebrew rabbis in Harlem actually helped Marcus Garvey and the UNIA write the Constitution, the hymn. They also were going to have a meeting at Madison Square Garden because the UNIA to this date is the largest black or grassroots organizing effort. For about 11 years, I did professional faith-based advocacy and political organizing, so I know what good organizing is. To date, they organized the most black people worldwide in a grassroots movement, and they were going to have a meeting at Madison Square Garden to talk about the future religion of the Negro, like what religion should we go to, and the Hebrew faith was on the table, but unfortunately, we know what happened to Marcus Garvey. But I always like to bring out that though he was the charismatic leader and speaker, both his wives, Amy, he married and divorced two sisters named Amy, they played a huge role in the nitty-gritty work, and Hebrew rabbis played a huge role. When we see a leader out front, we should always remember there are people in the background playing a role. So Prophetic Whirlwind is inspired by that speech, but it's really Yah's Ruach, like we read about in Ezekiel 37. And one of the key scriptures is Isaiah 11:11-13. And so one main goal of Prophetic Whirlwind is to learn about the Hebrew tribes in Africa, uncover them, teach about them, connect the diaspora of Hebrews to the Hebrews in Africa, and to work together. I love when someone gets a DNA test back and they get a tribe, and because of something that they read on my teachings or something they heard in the workshop, they actually have scientific proof that they are Hebrew. I knew a rabbi from Brooklyn who was Jamaican from the UK, and he had been in Torah like 30 years. He'd been to Ghana like 5 years. And we were exchanging information about our research, and I told him about the Agami tribe, which many of you have heard Rabbi Akwete Ama on this platform who's from that tribe. I mentioned to this other rabbi in Brooklyn that, the Ga are Hebrews, and showed him like an article that proved it, and he just hugged me. He said, now everything makes sense. I took my DNA and I got that tribe. And so this is a man that had been going to Ghana repeatedly, who had been, in Hebrew ministry for decades. And now that final puzzle piece of knowledge made his whole entire life make sense. And so that's one thing I love. That's one branch of Prophetic Whirlwind. But another branch, and I'll get back to the family in Africa, but I always have to share my testimony if I get to come before the people, because sometimes people see the things that you do and they don't see all that you went through or all that Yah brought you through. And so I do believe in Yahshua because he saved me. And I say he didn't just save my soul for the afterlife. He saved my soul, body, and mind from the things I went through growing up. So my parents were not religious. My mother was an atheist. My father was in the nation of 5%ers. He wanted to be a Hebrew, but he saw how some of the brothers preached in New York, and he told me they were too much, even for the 5%ers. They used to preach in front of his job when I was a little girl. So if you would have told me as a toddler, you're going to grow up to be a Hebrew, I would have said, no. I would have told you as a baby, no. But that's another story. Nothing against street preaching. We just need to use wisdom when we're doing it. But anyway, when I was 7, my parents married different people, and I was with my stepfather and my mother, and my stepfather lost his job, and we lost our house. I'm from East New York, Brooklyn, but at that time we were living in Queens. we lost our house, and within a few, months, we went from living in a house to living in hotels to going in the shelter system. And one day, while my stepfather was looking for another job, and my mother was in the homeless shelter alone, an ACS worker, that's Administration of Children's Services worker, came. And when I got home from school, he was taking my 10-month-old little brother and myself, literally out of my mother's hands. And we went into the foster care system, like so many young people. And from that day at 7, my childhood ended. And that's something that changes you radically. So when I spend so much time studying lost tribes, I have empathy for people who may be lost or disconnected from their family, because that was me for many years. Yah has now reconnected me with my birth father, reconnected me with my stepfather. My stepfather actually is friends with me on Facebook, and so all of this stuff that if I do live with Mother Malaka teaching the women, my stepfather will be in the live, watching, which I think is cool, but just a testament of Yah's power to reunite what has been split apart. And so I know firsthand about, Isaiah 6, there's good news to the poor and the brokenhearted, because I was poor and brokenhearted. I lost more by the age of 7 than some people lose in their whole entire lives. And so everything I do is rooted in the good news of Yah's word. So before we delve into the family in Africa, I want to remind everyone that, in Jeremiah, Israel was divorced from Yah. And in Torah, if a man and woman get divorced and they go be with other people, they can't come back together. And Israel went off with other deities. And so we need Yahshua to remarry us back to Yah. The commandments were basically ketubah between Yah and his people. So when I was, my grandmother and my aunt found out we were in traditional foster care, and they got us out of foster care, and they put us back. My maternal family took me and my little brother back in pink houses and public housing in the 90s. And a lot of people in New York will look down on pink houses or East New York. But for me, that represented family and home, and I was protected. Nothing, I can still go right back to the projects I grew up in, and nobody will bother me. They know what I'm about, and everybody supports me. And so at 10, when I was living with my grandmother, I started praying morning, noon, and night and reading the Psalms. And I did that for 4 years, from 10 to 14, and my family was perplexed because no one took me to church, and my mother was an atheist. And so one day my Aunt Frida looked at me, and she said, somebody needs to take this girl to church. So I walked church myself, and when the altar call was given to accept Yahshua, I went forward and accepted Yahshua. And as I said, from that day, my life changed. Now, early on, I read about the Sabbath in the Bible, and I said, I want to keep Sabbath at 14. And my Sunday school teacher said, only love, you're thinking too deep. It's not that deep. And I would ask questions in Sunday school that my Sunday school teacher, who was in seminary, just look at me and be like, only love, you just asking really hard questions. But even in spite of that, I'm grateful for the people who took me in and didn't treat me badly. And I always say me coming into Torah and coming into my Hebrew identity is not just something new, but it's Yah growing me into more truth. That started at 10. And I always have to share the testimony because, Yah can do anything with your life. Even the stuff that hurts you the most or breaks your heart the most could prepare you for your destiny. My father looked at me when I was born, and I was born a twin, but my twin brother was stillborn. So my parents, it was a very hard birth. But my father looked at me, and he gave me the name Chika because I had fat cheeks as a child. But fast forward, 2 Hebrew tribes that I studied the name Chika is special, and it means in Igbo, Yah is supreme or Yah is above all, and in Ewe or Ewe, it means gold or wealth. Now today, my father says it makes sense. You know, he texted me when I was in Nigeria and said, I gave you the name from my heart. So even though my father was a young father in 5 Percenters, Yah was still speaking through him. So nothing in our life is wasted. Because I had to grow up poor, because I had to grow up an orphan, because I had to grow up with less, because my grandmother would drag me down south all the time, when I go to Africa, I'm able to be in a village or a city. I'm able to build with any type of people, regardless if they don't have electricity, if the temple doesn't have indoor plumbing, because I know what it's like to live very humble circumstances. So I think Yah was even preparing me for this work in Africa through what I went through. So I'm sorry to take a detour, but I always want to share my testimony because Revelation says we're saved by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And people could just see me, you know, building with a king in Africa and say, wow, that's great, but they may not know, you know, what went into that. You know, that sometimes we don't always share our struggles. And so though getting information and facts is important, it's most important that, you know, for me, that Hebrews get reunited to Yah through Yahshua. And so with that, to talk about the work, and Sister Shan-T or BA, anything you wanted to ask me before I delve into the tribe in Africa? I'm sorry for the detour, but just wanted to share my testimony.
Nah, you good. You know, detour's always okay. You know, you get back on track. I really appreciate the story, especially about how you got only the Chika in your name. But yeah, that's just a little joke. But yes, go ahead, sis. BA, I don't have anything. BA, you have anything?
You know what, sis? You can go right ahead, but I think I know where you're gonna go as far as the tribes. And after you're done breaking that down, and I most definitely would like to mention something as well concerning your information you're about to share. So go right ahead.
Okay,
yeah, I got a comment. I'm from East New York too. Don't want to Montauk. East New York.
East New York?
There we go. Yeah.
I know you Brooklyn because your accent just sounds Brooklyn. So okay, Sal. A lot of stuff makes sense now. I've been listening to Debate Talk for you for like a long time. Okay, it's making sense now.
That's right. Continue.
Okay, East New York stand up, and they got a Messianic Assembly in East New York now. Shout out to them. I call them the East New York Hebrews. So we doing our thing. And a historic Hebrew assembly from Church of God and Saints in Christ is in East New York too. So we've been doing our thing. We might be rough around the edges, but y'all been dealing with us. So I started studying the Hebrew tribes in Africa in about 2012 because after I read Deuteronomy 28 and I prayed and fasted about our identity and keeping the commandments, and on the last day of the fast, it was confirmed for me. That's another testimony. But the thing for me is I knew no transatlantic slave trade ships docked from Israel. So we know that. Like in, the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, people weren't being, brought on slave ships from Israel. So for me, it was important to prove how Hebrews got deeper into Africa. Now, people need to understand until 1869, when the Suez Canal was completed, Israel was physically connected to Africa. Suez Canal was built for war and commerce, two things that can be very evil. And so Israel was literally severed from Africa. But, I started to study various tribes that had Hebrew origins and their migration story. So I started to study the Igbo. And from high school, I had an Igbo friend who just looked at me and said, "You look like my cousin. We're going to be friends." We're still friends to this day. I started to study, the Bani Ephraim of the Yoruba, the Ashanti, the Ewe, definitely Eve is actually, when you look at how the term Hebrew was translated into the English, the original Hebrew pronunciation and spelling is actually Eve. And there are tribes all throughout Africa whose original name was that name that has been changed, like the Ewe of Ghana, the Yoruba, the Fon. And so they do a lot of name changes so you don't know who the people are. And so I started going to documentaries in New York because in the Jewish community actually covers these tribes. And I found out about there's 1,000 Hebrews in Timbuktu. And when ISIS destroyed the library in 2011, the librarian, who was living as a Muslim man, went through the rubble and found books with Hebrew in them. He found a book with a list of all the Hebrew families in Timbuktu and found his family listed and realized he was actually a Hebrew. That community is kind of in hiding now because of the very there's a lot of threats. They're surrounded by non-Hebrew people, so it's just a lot of threats for them to come forward and do documentaries and all of that. So we have to pray for the family in Timbuktu. But I started to study the migration stories of various tribes in Africa, the traditions. Like when you look at certain tribes like the Igbo or the Ewe or the Ga-Adami, you see 8th day circumcision. You see Saturday as the holy day where you do not work. If you work, you could be put out of the community. You could be banned from festivals. In Ghana, Saturday for the whole entire people of Ghana was always a day where you didn't do work. And boys born on Saturday are considered special and named Kwame, which is why you see a whole bunch of African Americans naming their kids Kwame. We knew that name was special, but we didn't know the connection to the Sabbath. When colonialists came to Ghana, the Ghanaians would say, oh, you white people serve Sunday God. We serve Saturday God. That's how they understood it. And in South Africa, when you read about the Limba and different groups in South Africa and Zimbabwe, when the people started keeping Sabbath and Torah, they actually got courage to take on the colonialists. And Nelson Mandela said that the worst massacre in South African history was the massacre of the government against Sabbath-keeping South Africans who were connected to the Church of God and Saints in Christ, which that is the oldest Hebrew denomination in America, Church of God and Saints in Christ under Prophet Crowdy. They somehow connected with South Africa, and the people started keeping the Sabbath, started keeping Torah, and there were many groups in South Africa. They would call them Bantu prophets that would just keep Torah, and then the leader in prayer would get a message, even Zulu Zionists, that if we keep the Torah and keep, Sabbath, that the Most High will give us the strength to overthrow colonialists. So these South Africans, they were heavy in, Torah, but also standing up for their rights. And the government massacred about 300 of them. And there's a documentary that Church of God and Saints in Christ is making about them. So what is this connection between people keeping Torah and actually getting the courage to stand for justice? And Nelson Mandela, after all he went through and saw, said that is the worst massacre in South African history. And so you have to, the way you tell Hebrew tribes in Africa is because many Hebrews wrongly taught that all Africans were Hamites. Now camps who taught that are going to set up camps in Africa. They're going to do radio shows in Africa. They are on African television and top radio stations, but they never stop to apologize for the Hamite doctrine, because the way you as a Hebrew in the diaspora will prove your Hebrew heritage is not just through the curses, but it's going to be through your connection to one of these tribes. Because guess what? I have some friends that Deuteronomy 28, it works for them. As soon as I read it, my family was owned by the largest slaveholding family in America. It's a book. It's a documentary about it. As soon as I read Deuteronomy 28, I got it. But I got some friends from school that are black elites. That's not going to move them as much because the last time someone was poor in their family was in slavery. But if you come to them with the tribe that has all the Torah traditions, that has archaeology, that will wake them up. So I've traveled to Ghana 3 times and stayed for 2 months the last time. And then I've traveled to Nigeria twice. I've been to every Igbo state except for one. And I've been among the Ashanti and the Igbo the most. I've also been to Volta region with the Ewe. When I went among the Igbo, Rabbi Garvel, Oguga, and Elder Cletus Okoro took me to Ezi Eri, who is one of the Igbo Ezis that's kind of like their version of a king, but they don't really have kings. But he is a leader who keeps Torah, has a Hebrew congregation on his compound, and he lives in Obu Gad because his branch of the Igbo say they descend from Gad's son Eri, and that's why his name is Ezi Eri. It's a much longer name, but I'm just saying the simple name. And they, have the traditions and the archaeological proof of this migration. He comes here every year in July to Virginia and has a festival for African Americans of Igbo ancestry. And he lays hands on us, on our minds, on our heads to pray for the mental curse of slavery to be broken. Because he's a man of very, very strong faith and he's messianic. So when I visited him the first time, I was welcomed and many white rabbis, white Jewish academics, Israelis visit him. But he takes African Americans in. He gave a sister from Flatbush, Brooklyn, who's a leader among African Americans of Igbo ancestry. He made her a princess. And when I found out about her, I went on her Facebook to friend her. I said, this sister's from Brooklyn as well. He made a brother a prince. And he really takes seriously that we are his family. The first time I went, he didn't pray for me, but I wanted him to. The second time, I said, Ezzy, do you know the parable of the widow and the persistent widow and the judge from Yeshua? And he said, yes, only love, I'm going to pray for you, because I wasn't going to stop until he prayed for me. But he took me to the throne. I was going to keep staying. I was going to, you got to get your blessing whichever way you can. So
that's right.
He took me to his throne room, and you can look this up, Throne of Obu Gad. The throne has Paleo-Hebrew writing on the bottom of it that means gift. And it's an ancient throne, and actually when he prayed for me, he said, open the Bible to whichever scripture you see. And I opened it, and it was actually Zechariah, I think, 6:10, and it was about the 2 sticks coming back together, Ephraim and Judah. And that was what the scripture was about, and it wasn't anything premeditated. I just opened the scripture, and that's what came up. And I'll read that quickly, Zechariah 10. Starting at 6, I will strengthen the house of Yehuda, and I will save the house of Joseph. I will bring them back because I have compassion on them, and they shall be as though I had not rejected them, for I am their El, and I will answer them. Then Ephraim shall become like a mighty warrior, and their heart shall be glad as with wine. Their children shall see it and be glad. Their hearts shall rejoice in Yah. And so it goes on to talk about how he will whistle for his people and gather them. But in that room, you have representatives of Ephraim and Judah. And what many, I will not say every person in America is Judah. I won't say that. That's not honest. And I won't say everyone in Africa is from the Northern Kingdom. You have a remnant, you have Judah in Africa, and you have some Northern Kingdom here. But in Isaiah 11:11 to 13, it does say a couple of countries that the Northern Kingdom is going to be in, and then that Yehuda is going to be scattered to the 4 corners. And so we do have a scattering of people, even Hebrews in India. Someone contacted me from Papua New Guinea, New Zealand. All over the world, you have our people scattered. And so most of us in the diaspora may be Yehuda and Levi, but it's really important that we connect with these tribes in Africa because white Jews are connecting. They are giving money, and they are changing the indigenous Torah-based culture where people just, what was in the Torah, that's what they were doing before they had printed Bibles. The Igbo missionary G.T. Basden, who was sent by the Crown of England to convert the Igbo because he knew the Old Testament, when he was writing in his diaries, which you can buy on Amazon, G.T. Basden, he said, I think I found a lost tribe of Israel because their culture is identical to Torah. When he sent word to the Crown because he thought they were going to celebrate him for his discovery, he got a letter back saying, do stop talking about that Jewish stuff. We want them to be Christians. And so, many times we have been, taught that when we were brought over here, we didn't have any faith. But if you look in the slavevoyages.com database, it has a database of names of people on slave ships and where they docked from. And many of them say Hebrew, and many of the names, the majority of the names actually have Yah in them at the beginning or end. It will actually make you cry, and that's slavevoyages.com. You can see literally the names of the people on the slave ships, and then you understand why the names were changed. But I want to give a quick overview of Hebrews and how to tell Hebrews in Africa. You definitely want to try to talk to elders and royals, because when I was in college and I had Igbo friends, a lot of my young Igbo friends, even in high school, they had no idea about this. So people who are more westernized, younger, they may not even know who they are, because we have to remember the family in Africa is waking up as well. So some people may be doing Torah practices and not even knowing why. Like the average Shan-T knows they migrated from Israel. But when you ask them, where are you going to worship this weekend? They'll be like St. Peter's Catholic Church or nowhere, because for them it's more like culture and tradition. But it's not like, oh, I have to do something religious to say I'm Hebrew. And that's a little fallacy on their end, but on our end, we sometimes disregard the cultural part and the traditional part, and we just take on a Hebrew title like a religion, and it's not a religion. It's a bloodline. So we both can learn from each other. But you can tell usually by the migration story, a migration from Israel. One of the most popular Ga Adami songs that was remixed to like a reggae song that they play at their weddings, baby dedication, funerals, in the club, on the radio, says we left Israel long, long ago. And I knew a Ga Adami girl, Lady Miranda, if you're listening, shouting you out. And she's like my age. And she said until she started keeping Torah, she didn't realize what that song meant, but she had been dancing to it all her life. And it literally says they left Israel, they went to Ethiopia. It's a song about how they migrated and even how people tricked them with their identity and told them they were going to help them and wipe the sweat from their brow, but they were really deceiving them. So a migration story from Israel. Names that are similar to biblical places, or Hebrew words. Many Bantu words are identical to Hebrew. Many Igbo words, many words that tribes in Ghana use are identical to Hebrew. Torah practices such as Saturday being sacred, menstrual separation for women, eighth-day circumcision for boys, mikvahs. Among the Igbo and Ashanti, separate people told me this, but like in Leviticus, when a woman is accused of adultery and you go to the priest and he makes the drink, and if she drinks it and her stomach blows up or her thighs blow up, that's a sign that she's cheated. The Igbo and the Ashanti do that. And an Igbo person I know who's about 45, who's from Arachuku, a very ancient village that lost a lot of people to slavery, he grew up seeing women who were blown up with that drink. And, people pointing to them and saying, abomination, abomination, oh, she cheated. You literally have people who are living out Torah, not because of religion, because of who they are. So you want to look for practices that are identical to Torah, which means you have to know what's in Torah. Many white Christians went to Africa and they saw people sacrificing lambs because many of the tribes keep Passover festivals like the Homowo that the gods do, but they may call it something else. And during Homowo in Ghana, people are literally putting red blood on the doorpost. But when Christians saw that, they just said, oh, paganism, they're sacrificing an animal. But the thing is, especially if the people were from the northern kingdom, they were not in Israel when Yeshua came. They may not know, even if they're southern kingdom, they may not know that, Yeshua's the lamb. So they're going to keep sacrificing lambs. I spoke to a Tefli elder whose name means Joseph people, and he was very upset that white rabbinical students told them not to sacrifice a lamb for Passover. And some of us may be like, well, yeah, they don't need to sacrifice, but if no one told them about Yeshua, they're still following their Levitical practices. So practices that match Torah. And then also, again, you have to know the different practices. And many times you'll find the same conditions that we're in. And so I also got to spend a lot of time with the Ashanti royals and seeing how they treat their queen mothers and how they treat their women. And queen mothers are in scripture. It's called Gabara in Hebrew. And you see Solomon, when Bathsheba comes to him, asking for a chair to sit on his right hand. So again, some Hebrews see that certain tribes have queen mothers and they say Hamite, but actually those tribes are continuing, what Solomon had and what kings in Israel had. Also the stools that, especially in Ghana, royals sit on when they're, chosen as royalty are similar to the seat of Moses. And Yeshua talks about the seat of Moses as a seat of authority. And when you sit on a stool, you have authority. So many times we've been taught to be ashamed of African culture, but many things in African culture are actually Torah. Like in Ghana, they will not do weddings at night. And they have a game where a man has to search for his wife, and her sisters will be veiled just like her, or her girlfriends, and he has to uncover the veiled women until he identifies his wife. The reason for this is because they don't ever want a brother to be tricked the way Jacob was tricked. So Ghanaians will not usually have night weddings. And so those are just some of the traditions, just like the knocking for engagement. Most African traditional weddings, the man goes to the woman's family and does a knocking to ask for her hand in marriage. If you study ancient Hebraic marriage customs, you will see that they did a knocking where the man and his father would go to the woman's house and knock on the door. If she wanted to marry him, she opened up the door and he had a meal with her family and they negotiated the ketubah. If she wasn't feeling him, she kept the door closed. Yeshua says in Revelation, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone wants to sup with me, he should open the door. And he's alluding to that knocking ceremony that Hebrews before the exile knew about. The only people on earth who are doing knocking ceremonies for engagements are in Africa. Jews kept other parts of the ancient Hebraic wedding, but they didn't keep that part. And at the end of the knocking, the groom will tell the wife, I go away to prepare a place for you in my Father's house. And Yeshua said, I go away to prepare a place for you in my Father's house. They drink one glass of wine together, and then the groom and the bride, they say, we won't drink another glass of wine until we're together at the wedding supper of the Lamb. And so many things in the parables in the ministry of Yeshua actually allude to this wedding. And in Africa, they're still doing these traditions that all point to our marriage to Yah. And so I think it's really beautiful when you know Hebrew culture and you know Torah, then when you go to Africa, you can understand a lot of what you see. And I have a book coming out, Prophetic Whirlwind, Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny, where I highlight 15 Hebraic groups in Africa, and we go through their traditions, their oral history, their language, their customs, because it's really important that we make contact. The Sefwi of Ghana are they're the first Hebrew group I visited in Ghana. And their elder told me a lot of what is happening to them because the Jewish world is very fascinated with them. People keep the feast with them. There's a documentary doing Jewish about them. But what they're doing is teaching them rabbinical customs. And so this elder, with tears in his eyes, he said, we need African Americans. We need you to document our culture. And this is the elder whose name means Joseph's people. And I was deeply humbled, and that's how we started Operation Joseph, which is an initiative where African American Hebrews help Hebrews in Africa. And to date, we've supported 43 Hebrew congregations, orphanages, and nonprofits that train people, educate people that are led by Hebrews. And recently, some of the Hebrew family from Nigeria who we connected with went to Ghana for a unity Sabbath, and now they're building. And so that's something that was started with Hebrew Nation Building, and I really appreciate them quickly stepping up to help the people because some people could not even stay at Sabbath worship because they were choosing between farming and Sabbath, because now everything has been flipped, and now Sunday's Sabbath, and now people are being tempted to work on Saturday, even though all the Christian pastors that are Ghanaian know that Sabbath is the day, and they've admitted that to a friend that I'm working on a project with who works with pastors. So I want to pause here because just want to check in and see if there are any questions or anything that you wanted more info about.
This is Sister Shan-T. I do have a couple of questions, and then I'll let B.A. chime in. Want to actually get your confirmation on this. When you were talking about the story of how the Muslim guy, he was the librarian in Timbuktu of the library, pretty much, that got taken down. You know, he said he discovered he was Hebrew. Is Ishmael still considered to be Hebrew because his father Abraham was a Hebrew or one that crossed over? That's the first question, and then I got 3 questions, and then for the record, do the Igbos and the Shan-T and the Sefwi see the Sabbath as Friday sundown to Saturday sundown? And if you forget the next question, I'll remind you. But could there be some sort of syncretism, or is there any type of syncretism in what the what our people in the land do as far as Queen Mother? Could it possibly? I know it's in the Bible, definitely. Could it be linked to remnants of Asherah or anything like that? So that's my 3 questions. Could Ishmael be considered Hebrew, and do the people in the continent who say they celebrate the Sabbath, adhere to the Sabbath, do they see it as Friday sundown to Saturday sundown?
So the first question is, with Ishmael, I know some people say there's Hebrew Israelites, there's Hebrew Ishmaelites, there's Hebrew Edomites. I don't hold that belief. I think Hebrew is a separate bloodline. I also don't hold the belief that only the father matters. I think the father and the mother matter, especially when it goes to same gender. Because if you take a DNA test, I'm going to get my maternal DNA back. My little brother's going to get his paternal. So I think sometimes when it said the father mattered, it mattered among the tribes of Israel so the land could be allotted better. That wasn't a rule for when you bring outside people in. Now, of course, Ruth converted. So, of course, if someone converts truly, they become a part of the family of Yah. But we see in Ezra, they had to send their wives away. And actually, the Limba of South Africa, who tested as Levites, they shared that part of the reason why they left Israel is that they were Levites, that their ancestors were Levites who, when Ezra said you had to put away your foreign wives and children, they didn't want to do it. So they rolled out, and they ended up in Zimbabwe and South Africa and living under apartheid and all of that. So I guess they learned their lesson, because to marry a Limba man today, even if you say, oh, I'm a Hebrew Israelite woman, woo, they will make you go through like a whole initiation process. You have to throw away everything in your kitchen. You got to cut your nails, cut your hair, do all this stuff in order to marry a Limba brother, because now they are very strict. And so when we see Ishmael and Hagar, and I'm not those who put down Ishmael and Hagar. Hagar is the first recorded person in the Bible who named Yah. So, you know, she cried out to Yah, and he heard her, and he gave Ishmael a promise and a bloodline, but it was Isaac who the Hebrew bloodline went through. Many times what we don't understand is that a new bloodline can be started by Yah. Like when we look at the Moabites and the Ammonites, those are new bloodlines. When we look at Ishmael, that's his own, you know, bloodline. When we look at Edom, you know, that's his own bloodline. And I'm not one that thinks other nations can't be saved. I think through Yahshua other nations can be, but that doesn't erase, you know, that Yah is going to do justice. So you have to be on the right side and cleave to Israel. But I think when you believe only Israel can be saved, then everybody has to become Israel, and that's just not accurate. So the reason why that man was Muslim is because many times in Africa, the reasons they had to migrate was not only because of Greeks and Romans in 70 A.D., but many had to leave Egypt and Yemen, like the Limba were in Yemen and had to leave because of the Islamic conquest later in our history. And if either you converted or you paid a tax or you were sold into slavery. So one thing that Islam has done in Africa is it's actually covered up a lot of who the Hebrews are, because Islam's a religion. Not everyone in Islam is of, you know, Ishmael. There's various bloodlines who are Muslim, even white people. So his family were those who converted so they wouldn't have to undergo persecution. And his family was a little bit better money-wise than the 1,000 other Hebrews in Timbuktu whose families never converted. That's not a judgment on him, you know, but that is one thing that would happen is many Hebrews would convert. And if you look at it, there's a lot of similarities with Torah and Islam. So for some people, they might have been confused or might have said, why am I going to be persecuted? This is close, though it is two different faiths. But what you have in Africa is a lot of Hebrews who converted to Islam, just like a lot of them converted to Christianity or to different faiths. So I don't consider Ishmael like a Hebrew Ishmaelite or, you know, a Hebrew, though, you know, Abraham is his father. I consider him something different. And that, to me, different doesn't mean bad or horrible. I just want to make that clear, because I think sometimes we get to a point where it's like, well, if a person, you know, I like that person, so they have to be a Hebrew, you know, they can cleave, you know, to Israel. And so with the Timbuktu situation, he was a Hebrew. His family was Hebrews that were made to convert. You have the B'nai Ephraim in Senegal who live as Muslims today, but they maintain that they are Hebrews and they know their ancestors Jacob. And they have a very successful village. And when the Jewish press came to them, they said, please don't report on us a lot because we don't want any static, you know, with our Muslim neighbors. And when they build a hospital or something for their village and they don't get foreign support, Yah has blessed them on their own. They also build for their Muslim neighbors. But many of their Muslim neighbors are also Hebrews too that don't know it. So that's question one. And then sis, you might have to remind me of the last, but with the Queen Mother, I don't think it's anything to do with Ashtoreth or anything like that because of the function she serves. It seems very similar to the function that Queen Mother served in Torah. And, you know, among the Shan-T, for instance, the Queen Mother is through the queen that the king is chosen. So if the king has a son, it doesn't automatically go to his son. It will be his sisters. But some of the things a queen mother does is she's the only one who can reprimand the king. She's a leader for the woman. But from what I've seen, there really was no – the first time I went to Ghana, the queen mother passed. And even though they had to bury her, they didn't have her funeral until a year later because it was 2 weeks long, and dignitaries came even from white countries, and it was businesses were not allowed to be open. It was a big celebration, so they needed a year to cover it. And when I went to the celebration of life. I was with other queen mothers, and I didn't see anything that was similar to Astra's worship. Now, of course, there's a whole I've been to the Shan-T Palace. There's a whole separate quarters for queen mothers that I can't go in, so I can't say positively what they're doing. The first time I was there, because the sisters, I looked like them, I thought I could just slide in, but they all had the same print on. And I didn't have the print. That was the one day I was just as an American. And so I got stopped, and then a queen mother's son, I was hanging out with him, and he was breaking things down to me. But I was trying to slide in to see what the sisters were doing, to be honest. But they was like, not them. A brother was like, no, you can't just slide in. But from what I saw, it wasn't, because I've looked into the Astra thing, it wasn't really, it didn't seem like that. It actually seemed like the type of womanhood they were walking in is opposite of what women who worship Astras walk in, but can't say for sure. And then the last question, sis?
The last question was, you said they celebrate Sabbath, they honor Sabbath. Do they consider Sabbath Friday sundown to Saturday sundown? The reason I ask that is because some people are equating Sabbath now to be Sunday, some part of Sunday, a big chunk of Sunday. So I want to actually get their confirmed understanding of what day Sabbath is and when that Sabbath starts.
So with the Sabbath that I've seen among the Hebrew tribes, especially in Ghana, it is Saturday. It doesn't roll into Sunday at all. Like they say Sunday, Sunday is white people, like Sunday God, white people God. Now, I do know that some people say Sabbath is sun up to sundown on Saturday, and I do know one person who is from the God tribe that I think did a teaching that supported Sabbath from sun up to sundown based on different things he saw in his culture. But from what I saw, because I worship with Hebrew congregations in Nigeria and Ghana, it started Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, that traditional way. But I do know that one Hebrew tribe, the God, they have like 2 Sabbaths in the middle of the week, and then the Limba had to keep Sabbath in secret because, again, the South African government was slaughtering our people who kept Sabbath. And actually they said, if you're going to have a Sabbath-keeping congregation, you need to register under a white denomination like Methodist, Lutheran. They really persecuted the family a lot in South Africa. And so what the Limba would do is they only kept, and I'm not a lunar Sabbath girl, so please, I don't want to get into that. I'm not telling you to do it. But what they would start doing is, because of the persecution, they kept Sabbath in secret. The kids could not even know. And they started, taking Rosh Chodesh, New Moon, and that being their Sabbath. But I think that was because if you do it less frequently or if it moves around, then the government can't catch you. Because remember, apartheid and all of that and them killing Sabbath keepers. But today, now that apartheid is over, the Limba keep Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. So,
thank you for that. Brother B.A., please go ahead with your question.
Hello. Shalom, brother.
Yeah, shalom, sis. Most definitely, I just appreciate the fact that you're sharing your experience over in Africa with us. It's most definitely humbling to hear it. When it comes to, and I know over here in the States, there's a doctrine about who Esau is. So since you're over there dealing with the lost tribes and you're actually looking at the traditions that they're keeping, which line up with the Torah, if anyone has an idea who Esau is, I most definitely would like to I will most definitely take their word or hear what they would have to say according to their understanding who Esau is and how do they. So first, I would like to say, if you have experienced anything when it comes to Esau with these people, what's their attitude towards Esau, if you don't mind me asking?
So this is the thing from my studies. Just like Israel got scattered and mixed with different nations, Esau mixed with Ishmael and Canaan women early on. So there are some of Esau that are quote-unquote Arabian. Now, Arabian is just a title that's been put on a whole bunch, millions of people, just like black has been put on a whole bunch of us. I know a sister from Lebanon who we would think is Arabian, and she made it clear in an interview. She said, I am not Arab, and she named like a tribal group. And that really opened my eyes to, this whole system just has given everyone a different identity, but every people group that comes from Adam and Eve have a biblical identity. I actually saw a Chinese preacher teaching his people about, and it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, but he had done research about how they were Ham. That doesn't mean there's no black Hamites, but, if you look at the Khoi San people, they look Asian, and there was DNA that came out that some of the earliest Chinese people were black. So you know how we're waking up our people to being Hebrews? When you watch that message, which Biblical Hebrew Awakening put up, they're sitting in the church, and they're like emotional, like, wow, we're Asian, but somebody told us we were in the Bible. And so we have to, everybody's identity has been just messed up, and that's the cause of confusion. We know who's the author of confusion. So there is some of Esau that is Arab. There are some of Esau that mix with Greek and Rome, and they are white, or they look white. There is some of Esau. Now, this is what I saw. This is what I know from Nigeria, and women, sisters from this tribe have come and told Hebrews who they were. And one actually keeps Torah and fellowships with us. There is a tribe called Edo in Nigeria, and they are descended from Esau, from Edomites. Now, one sister came on a Facebook post, my friend that taught a lot about Hebrews in Africa for many years. She came on his post, and she said, I'm an Edomite. She said, I descend from Solomon and an Edomite woman that he had children with. Solomon had all those wives. She said it. And then another sister, she is in Torah. She accepted Yeshua, and she actually does Hebrew music, and she fellowships with us. And she said, I know I'm from the Edo. I'm an Edomite. She knows it's not a thing, and she is cleaving to Israel. She keeps Torah better than some of the Hebrew sisters, and she has a nice spirit, because remember it says don't despise an Edomite because he is your brother. Now there may be some Edomites that mix with other nations that hate us, and they've taken on that white supremacy stance. But with the Edo people in Nigeria, they look just like us. And there's an academic article by Professor Dietrich Lang about how the Yoruba migrated to Nigeria, and how they were actually part of the northern kingdom that was taken into Assyria. When you look at the Yoruba king list and the Assyrian king list, you see there's a break where there's a list of Hebrew kings and Assyrian kings, and other things that show when the Assyrian Empire collapsed, some of Yoruba migrated to Nigeria. The Bani Ephraim are Yoruba people that came to Nigeria because they were casted out during the Inquisition, because there were a lot of black Hebrews that were persecuted in the Inquisition. So there's different branches of Yoruba, but this one branch in the article, it said when they migrated to Nigeria, Esau was with them. And when you look at Edo and Yoruba culture, there's some similarities. They're kind of close to each other geographically a little bit, but these are black people. They're in Nigeria. They did not lose a lot of people to the slave trade transatlantic, but sadly today, thousands, millions of Edo girls are being sex trafficked to Italy and to Russia and to Mali. Like 20,000 are in Mali. This is a very real issue. You can Google Edo State and sex trafficking. The king finally had to respond. And so, but when I get around the Hebrew tribes in Nigeria, for instance, now the Igbo have been persecuted. They don't really list the Edo people as their persecutors, but, you know, there are many other Hebrew tribes in Nigeria. I've never had one badmouth an Edo person to me. I'm just going from what I know. And if they're white Edomites, they're in a different social context. So, like, they will even call themselves Jews. But in Nigeria, a Jew is black. If someone's from Judah, there's no need for them to say, I'm a Hebrew Israelite. I'm not a Jew because that's white. In Ghana, a Jew is black. So, you know, even some of the terms that our people get very sensitive about, I'm like, yeah, in Ghana, in a village, there's no white Jews. It's just Jew, Christian, Muslim. You know, so I never heard anyone badmouth an Edomite. But I also understand that we have a different social context where we've had to live among the people who have hated us. Our women have had to breastfeed their children. So when you're a little bit more intimate, you may have more grudges versus if maybe you're in a village and you never had to deal with someone from Esau. But none of the Hebrew tribes in Nigeria have complained to me about the Edo people. And the Edo sisters who are in Torah, they're not trying to usurp. They're not trying to take anybody's identity. They just came through Yahshua and they're trying to fellowship. And it's I'm not saying all Edomites are in Edo State, Nigeria. No, that's not possible. I think they've been scattered just like us. But a lot of people don't think any black person is Esau. And you have a whole state that is Esau, and the women and girls are really suffering now. And some people may say, well, I don't care about those Edomite girls. That's what they get for what they did to us. But I don't think that should be the attitude, because guess what? Igbo girl who was living in Edo State as a college student was also almost trafficked as well. And I heard her story on YouTube. So don't think that that Hebrew girls are not being caught up. And so we can't despise an Edomite because they're your brother, and who more likes to be your brother than someone who, you know, looks like you. So, Brother B.A., did that answer your question? Hope that wasn't confusing.
No, sister, I most definitely appreciate that. And like you just said, your last words, according to the Torah, we're not supposed to hate our brother. And I most definitely appreciate and respect the fact that you brought that information out. And I would also like to ask you, oh, wow. Oh, I hate that I had that happen. I was about to ask you, and it's on the tip of my tongue. Okay. There's a rabbi by the name of Ishtak Shapiro. He's wrote a book called Return of the Kosher Pig, and he's done research on the lost tribes as well. And I've noticed that there's a lot of other individuals who are going over to Africa, and they are being honest about the 10 tribes actually being of African descent, or whichever you prefer to call it. We know these are people of color. I remember a couple years ago, in social media, there were a group of apologists coming out saying that the Hebrew Israelites were never black to begin with, and this is all lies. And I wish that they would have gotten a chance to talk to individuals such as yourself and other people who have traveled over to Africa and who've done the research, who've taken the time to study and to put all this information together for our people. Because I have a teenager and I have an 8-year-old as well, and just you sharing the things you have shared and the books you have written, I'm going to make it a point to get those things for my kids so they can most definitely learn. And I just believe that the individuals who have come out and spoken against the fact that Israel are people of color, I think there's an agenda. I believe that they do not want our children to be aware that there's a great possibility that they are the chosen people of the Most High. A lot of people don't want our children teaching their children when it comes to our God. They rather it be the other way around. So I most definitely try to tell people that there's an agenda, there is a goal to just discredit whatever we do. And from here on out, I most definitely appreciate that when it comes time to speak on who is and who isn't, that I would prefer to hear information. I mean, I would prefer to hear people like you and other people who have actually experienced going over into Africa and dealing with these people and witnessing what they're going through, because your testimony and what you have seen, it counts and it goes a long way, other than individuals who just talk, oh, yeah, we are children of Israel. Okay, we all know that. But I'd rather hear what a person who's actually experienced it and who's actually living it, who's actually spent time with these people and seen the traditions they are keeping and the common social status of how the people think over there, totally different from the way we think. And that's all I have to say, sis.
So it's a big issue, with certain Christian apologetics. So right on this platform, Debate Talk for You, a very well-known Christian apologist was on with Elder Mayana Johnson, Amuna Israel, and Ron Divine Prospect, and, and myself. And when I was bringing up the Hebrews in Africa and that white Jews have organizations dedicated to visiting them, writing about them, studying them, that apologist just lost it on the air. And when I mentioned, I was a keynote at a conference on African Hebrews in Isaiah 11:11 that an elder Hebrew woman, Denise Allen, put together. And the second in command of Jewish Voice was a guest at the conference. And when I was speaking, he didn't disagree with anything.
Wow.
He actually said prophetically, you need to know this. And when I mentioned Harriet Tubman's original name, Amarita, which some of her descendants leads the ARC PA New Jersey, and they have a website, Amarita Connect, because for Hebrew businesses, and I know them and they're their family. When I mentioned her original name, the rabbi almost fell out of his chair. He said, that's a Hebrew name. And he didn't debunk anything I said. Jewish Voice does, trips to Africa to help the Hebrews there. Now, the tricky part is that many white Jews will admit we're the 10 lost tribes. Someone even went to Bishop late Bishop Eddie Long's church and preached that we're the 10 tribes. But the thing is, Judah gathers, and that's why so many are going to Africa and India, because whoever gathers is going to be thought of as Judah. And when I saw, white Jews going over, writing articles, it just something inside of me was like, we need to be doing that. And I didn't know how I would get there. I wanted to help financially. I didn't know how I would help. And I thank Hebrew Nation Building and everyone who donated to Operation Joseph. I really, really thank you. But I knew that I had to get on the ground, because whoever helps gather, that is going to be one of the things that determines if you're Judah, not how loud you're screaming. And so they will give up the 10 tribes, but Judah and Levi, especially Judah, people don't want to give up. But there is so much information that comes out of white publications, like the International Society for the Study of African Jewelry is an academic society of everyone teaches at a university, including Ivy League. Everyone has a PhD, and all they focus on is Jews or Hebrews in Africa. And they have a conference in Paris every year. These people have no agenda. Like Professor Dietrich Lang is not religious. He was just an anthropologist that traveled throughout West Africa in his 20s, and he wrote about what he saw. He's not religious. He's like, these people are not Hamites, and his colleagues attacked him. And he said, y'all can attack me, but this is what it is based on the data, the archaeology. So I like to present, I think the testimony of our people is worth anything else. And if you go to the Schomburg Library in New York City, they have the largest collection of African and African-American Hebrew books, dissertations. They even have pictures of the Black Panthers in Israel who were black people, like the Black Panther Party, their Israel chapter. They have a lot of scholarship by us and by others who prove who we are. So I want to lift up the African elders and royals and the African teachers that we know who are writing books and doing things. And that's why I quote certain people in my book. But I also like to use white sources and, just unbiased sources, non-religious sources, because then it's like, why is Professor Dietrich Lang lying about the Yoruba? What does he gain? What does the head of Kalanu, Harriet Bogard, who I know because I worked with her daughter for 40 years, what does she gain as a white Jewish woman working with, talking about the Sefwi of Ghana on her website? Like, why is she doing, and when I even asked that apologist, like, why are white Jews, like, spending all this time in Africa, the person just got angry as if they shouldn't be doing it and started talking about Palestinians in Israel, which I'm for justice for Palestinians, but that was a whole smokescreen. And it was almost like he didn't like that. And I'm like, you can discredit us, but when it's people of other nations retiring, and let's be honest, not every white Jewish person who's over there is over there for good means. Some are over there for bad means, confuse us. They want to keep. One rabbi went to the Igbo and down-talked African Americans, and the Ezis really checked him and said, we're one people, we're Hebrews, and they said, we don't need your money, and they gave him like thousands of dollars, not naira, to humble him. They said, here, we're giving you a gift. And he didn't have anything to say, and in his replay video, he didn't play that. But one of my peoples was in the meeting when it all happened. So not every one of these people has good intentions, but if someone's writing an unbiased book and they're not black, like what they're down with Black Hebrew Israelites, with the Christian apologists, because I come out of, before I became Hebrew, just for full disclosure, I went to one of the best seminaries in the country. I wrote for Christian magazines, spoke and planned large-scale Christian conferences among evangelicals. And what I am seeing now is because so many black people are leaving the church and waking up to the truth, now you have all these apologetic think tanks springing up, even one led by a black woman. And I know most black evangelical women that are doing stuff. I'm not bragging, but that was my world, and it was only a few sisters that were really allowed to do stuff. So most of us know each other. Sister I don't know from anywhere, but she has a whole apologetics thing, and you have to ask who's funding this and why. I think they're running scared because the average Christian in the world today is a black woman globally. So now that more sisters are waking up to this truth, they're really getting nervous because we're the purse strings of the church. And that's not just the black church. That's the church universal. There's a white evangelical man, Wes Greenberg Michelson, who studied this and wrote a book called From Times Square to Timbuktu, like from Babylon to Timbuktu. And he had a black woman on the cover, and he said, this is the church. And so, a lot of the apologists will either close their ears to what is happening in Africa, or they'll discredit it as saying, oh, these are just missionary, they're just claiming Hebrew. But there were Nigerians writing white rabbis in Europe in the 1800s saying, we're lost tribes, please help us. And the rabbis didn't help them. So, when these things come out, why can't Christian apologists recognize it? But we have to understand that many, not all, but many conservative white Christians come out of a strand that was anti-Semitic.
Exactly.
They weren't even, let's be honest, 50 years ago, until this whole support Israel thing popped up, they weren't feeling white Jews. They sure enough not going to feel no black Hebrew. So when some of these apologists don't want to hear about this, they also don't care what a white Jewish person says. I'm just going to be honest. We got to understand fully who we're dealing with. So I don't know if you have another question, but the information is out there, if they want to read it. And there's a tactic to keep this information from the children, from Christian spaces. It is really, trust me, because I shopped around my book. No, I was approached by multiple publishers who wanted to publish, what they thought the book would be. And then when they saw the proposal, it's like, can you do a memoir of your life? And I'm saying, well, I'm young, so how am I writing a memoir? You all are more comfortable with the foster care and homelessness than us being the people of the Bible. So no, I'm not going to put, not that I'm ashamed of, I'm not ashamed, but y'all told me to write the book about this. So trust me, I know that there's a big agenda to keep this truth hidden.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, praise the Most High that no matter what, the word is going to get out. And with sisters like you and a few others who are doing the work, I really appreciate that. And my last question would be, or my last statement, for those who are listening and who are dealing with the flack, or you hear the negative comments about who we are, stay in prayer and pray that the Most High continues just to release the information and put it out. And the thing is that, like the sister was just saying, a lot of people are leaving the churches. That is something that a lot of Christians are in denial about. I know where I live at. I live in Marysville, California. And last year, within a 6-month, it was a 6-month time period, 4 churches closed down in the little town I live in because the people were getting tired of the same message, because the churches were not delivering anything. People felt like they were being lied to. People felt like it just wasn't enough. And where I live at now, that was a year ago. Now we're in March of 2019. Marysville has always been known as a small little town, predominantly European or white people living here. Now we have a conglomerate, or I don't say conglomerate, we have a mixture of a lot of our people, a lot of Latinos, and various other ethnicities. But one thing that stands out, there are a lot of people who are observant of the Torah living out here now. I see a lot of brothers calling themselves by the name of Israel. I see a lot of us. I see Rastas. I see a lot of Israelite brothers. Because at first, I've been out here living out in Marysville for about maybe 5 years now, and I was the only one. Now, in 2019, I see brothers wearing fringes. I see brothers. I see sisters in head coverings. I see brothers wearing dreadlocks. As a matter of fact, there's a family who I know. They're under the whole. Their whole family is under the Nazarite oath. They're under the oath out here. So the spirit is moving, and the knowledge is getting out there, and people are coming back to the ways of the Most High. So praise Him, most definitely. And I'm done.
Praise the Most High. We got one caller on the line. I just wanted to let it be known that they've been waiting for a while. But Sister Only Love, I hate to cut it short, but I know because Sister Only Love only has a limited amount of time here. So, Sal, can we bring the caller in?
All right, let's go to the caller. Let's go to 213-400. You're live. 213, you're going to have to lower your speaker. I'm hearing an echo. Okay. Yep. I guess they can't hear us. Let's go to the next caller. Let's go to Skype caller. You're live.
Yes, shalom. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, shalom.
It's A9. How y'all
Brother
doing?
Anonymous.
You know, I had to call in. Got my whole family on. Man, look at this. First off, congratulations, sis, on the book, you know.
Thank you.
Super excited. I just wanted to just really quick encourage the family and just say this, even on the spaces, you know, all of us, we operate in various spaces, and you see the awakening being serious, right? And it's not just even from a angry racist perspective. I mean, you know, even out here, because I'm in Georgia, and in various parts of Georgia, I got people hitting me up like, you know, I know that you've been into this for a few years. I'm just now coming into it. And like B.A. said, these people coming out of the churches. So all of this information, it becomes pertinent now. You know, it becomes very important for us to have books to reference people to have the right websites, the right resources send our brothers and sisters to, because it's happening. And all praise to the Most High. I even have a cousin. He went to prison and got out and been out for like 2 years now. And he calls me up one day and says, Shabbat Shalom, cousin. And I was like, what? So, and he's in California, right? But he's down in L.A. So it's like this thing is happening, and it's really happening right before our eyes. And so it's just becoming more pertinent for us to monitor everything that we're doing, started to build with those of us that have the same belief system, the same accountability process, and don't be discouraged, right? Don't be discouraged by what's being put in front of you, because like Sister Only Love said, even in the spaces that you're working in certain quote-unquote conscious communities, there is an effort behind the scenes to either discredit us or try to prove our information false. And the more you prove it properly, then they just change the narrative, right? That's what they just flip it on you and they change. So stay encouraged, stay focused, and keep your head on the grind, because it's working, it's happening, right? And so I just wanted to ask Sister Only Love real quick, how does it feel, sis? Like, how does it feel to be, to have the book come out, to be out here doing it, and just to actually see your work and all the people that you're working with, see it come to pass and actually see it happen?
It feels really humbling. So today the copy editor sent me the markup of the front cover and back cover, and everyone who gave an endorsement for the book, thank you. We have white people who endorse, black people, awakened Hebrews, black people that don't know their Hebrews, seminary professors, even a Korean Christian author endorsed the book. And actually, when we get attacked from like neo-Calvinist apologists, and I post about it, she's under the comments saying, y'all need to not even engage them, because, she has had whole white Christian conferences shut down for racism. And so there's people that you don't even know that might be rooting for you just because they're seeing what's true and what's not. And so it feels really humbling, and I thank all the family that welcome me over there, people that welcome me into their homes, royals that, talk to me, just to trust me with the history. The book is not all the information, but it was really made to be simple, to chronicle the history, and to also, at the end of each chapter, there's questions and a prayer. And so, and it all points to what does this information mean prophetically for our people. Because for me, I didn't want to write a book to just show how much I knew, but I want to write a book where when someone finishes it, they're closer to Yah, because that's really what it's all about. And I would say, to people, don't get discouraged, because even in trying to donate to the family in Africa, behind the scenes, there are financial institutions that don't want the donations to go forth. And people who pray with me know certain things, because the number one thing they never counted on us doing, especially in America, they never counted on us connecting with the family in Africa.
That was going to be my next question, too.
Yell on the street. They don't care if you make a white person kiss your feet. They did not want us making that connection. And when you look at the history of Pan-Africanism, I just posted an article today. There was a brother from Ghana in like the early 1900s who came to get some of us to move, and he was thwarted and framed like Garvey. And so we have a government program that still runs, and the whole point is to prevent the rise of a black Messiah. No other people on earth have a government program to prevent the rise of their Messiah. And so, COINTELPRO. And so it's definitely humbling, but I think the prayers of the people, it's humbling, and I just want to do more. There's family from Papua New Guinea that are reaching out, and from different places. And so, and then trying to help the African family understand, because some of them, you know, they don't understand that those who are saying they're Jews may not be. They're thinking, oh, we're one happy family. Not everyone in Africa, but some. They're like, oh, we come in all colors, you know, light skin, dark skin. I'm like, no, brother. That, you know, we come in different shades, but, you know, and so, right. You know, because sadly, you have Hebrews in Africa who have books written about them, but they don't get to read the books because there's a lack of libraries and bookstores. And so we are, and so I'll talk at the end about some ways we can help. But one Hebrew, when the documentary about his tribe premiered at the New York City Jewish Film Festival at Lincoln Center, I told him about it, and a lot of the Hebrew family came out, Torah only and Messianic. We were all in that room, and it was a lot of, you know, white people, and he said, wow, they're doing movies about us, but we can't afford to see the movie. And so this is, you know, I feel encouraged, but I just feel like there's a lot more that has to be done. And I want more people, you know, that have good intentions on the ground, you know, because some things you have to do face-to-face. And some conversations you have to have face-to-face.
That's what I was going to ask you lastly, too, is if somebody has a desire to go to, like, Ghana, you know, and if they can afford to go on their own or whatever, what's the best way to go about doing that?
I'm glad you asked that question, Anonymous. Yeah, she had that coming up. Go ahead.
So, because Shan-T knows there's an answer. So many people have asked me, I want to go with you. Are you doing trips and tours? And I never thought about that. But about a couple of years ago, one of my old seminary friends from Ghana, he 2 years ago brought me on the team to plan a spiritual pilgrimage to Ghana. We've been working on this way before the year of return was announced. And so July 25th to August 21st, there is a spiritual pilgrimage to go to Ghana, to participate in Panafest, visit the slave castles. There'll be an apology and reconciliation from the Council of Kings and Queens to visit the Ashanti, the Volta region with the Eze, the Accra, where Rabbi Akwete's people were. There's a lot of different events that will be happening. And it's a trip for people who are so-called black that are people of faith. But really with the trip, Gilbert, who some may have seen his video from Reclaim the Throne, which was a conference Hebrews to Negroes and Hebrew Nation Building had, a man who apologized for his family's role in slavery. He knows where the people, and he wants the Hebrews to lead on this trip because he says you all understand. And so when I went with a tour, and because it was a black tour, when I said, can we go visit the Hebrew people in Sefwi, they incorporated that to a tour. So I really don't suggest people go alone. I suggest you need to study the Hebrews in Africa before going because, you know, and you need to build the relationships. The first time I went to Nigeria, it was because I was invited. You know, the first time I went to Ghana, it was a tour, and then I was invited to visit the Sefwi. But we do have an opportunity for you to come from July 25th to August 21st for 2, 3, or 4 weeks. In the third week, we will visit in the third and fourth week, we will visit the different Hebrew communities, and you'll be able to see for yourself, speak yourself. We'll be with kings. You'll be able to speak to a queen mother if you want to ask her, where did this queen mother thing come from? And you can find out about that tour on godboxtours.com. It's called godboxtours.com. Everything is on the website. If you go to propheticworldwind.com and you click on blog, there is a blog I wrote about the Ghana trip, because this is not a trip for you to move to Ghana. This is not a trip to fulfill Bible prophecy. we can't guarantee that you'll get dual citizenship, but you'll get information about dual citizenship and doing business in Ghana. There's a lot of misinformation and fear-mongering happening around the year of return, but since W.E.B. Du Bois, Black people have been visiting and moving and living in Ghana. So as, you know, Yah did not give us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. This is just a tour to build with the people, to talk about how we can improve our communities here and in Africa, and where you can be on the ground. Because as much as I can talk about it, it's nothing like being on the ground. Every time I've gone, I've been welcomed back. Many people say, oh, Africans don't like us, this and that. The people who come here may not represent the people who stay, and there's nothing wrong with everybody who comes here. But that's a tour that has been put together, because the way I travel is very humble, and I know a lot of our families say they want to go, but I know if you go a humble way, you're going to be complaining, and I don't like traveling with scary and complaining people. So you're going to have security the whole time. You're going to have an air-conditioned coach bus and even be flown to different regions that are far, stay in nice hotels, you know, have everything planned out, so you have a good experience. But the family from Nigeria is going to get together with the Sefwi again and do like a unity meeting, so that we can even meet some of the Hebrew family from Nigeria while we're in Ghana. I'm just talked to leaders today to set that up. And so
now, I'm just going to say this part, sis. I just went on GodBoxTours.com just now while you were speaking. And for those of us that travel, I'm just going to say for those of us that travel, you can do this trip for what it would cost for you and your spouse or you and your, you know, significant other to go to like Cancun. So it's definitely, it's a good price. So I suggest if that's something that you want to do, go look at it, because I'm definitely looking into it. It's something that I've been hearing about and thinking about anyway, so, you know, we'll see. But I definitely suggest people start to take this thing serious. It's not just a hobby, right? This is something that's really happening. Get involved, get active, start building relationships. Like the sister was just saying, build some relationships. And let's see how far the Most High can take this. So, great job. Congratulations. You know what it is, Shan-T BA. Obviously, sis, thank you for what you blessed me with. I just didn't get a chance to get back to you, but thank you for that, and we'll talk more about that. And I hope everything else is going good with you. And you know what it is to the family. What up, though? I love you.
What up, though? What up, though? Real quick, Sister Only Love, can you give your book title? Can you give your book title and the time that it's dropping, and Yahweh willing, when it does officially come out, we can get you back on the show to talk more about that. So what's the book title?
The book title is Prophetic Whirlwind, Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny, and it should be out around April 4th, and it'll be available on Amazon and in certain bookstores, and also on the propheticwhirlwind.com website. You can get updates about it, and it's being published by Voices Publishing, which is an imprint of InterVarsity Press, and it's designed for Black people of faith to tell their story. So it's actually a Christian publisher, and the founder just let me tell the whole truth. So that's very interesting. Reverend Leroy Barber, who's a longtime Black evangelical leader who's just trying to empower the next generation. And then my website is propheticwhirlwind.com, and there's a lot of information on there of videos and teachings about the Hebrew customs and how they are preserved in Africa, and also a blog that explains the Ghana trip. And then I wanted to quickly mention Sister Shan-T, Women of the Whirlwind, is a prayer ministry under Mother Malaka Phillips that works with Prophetic Whirlwind and is really to pray for all of Israel and anyone who needs prayer, whether Hebrew or not, and also to give the sisters positive spaces for learning about the role of women according to Scripture, not according to doctrines, And so we have the Embracing Biblical Womanhood prayer challenge, and basically a discipleship challenge where you're getting units of lessons and articles and videos. You're getting also weekly reflections on Thursday at 7 a.m., which we try to put on the Prophetic Whirlwind YouTube page about, being a woman of Yah, mother of Yah, wife of Yah. A lot of information, and there's a team of 4 powerful sisters that pray with Mother Malaka. And if you need one-on-one prayer, you can just go to womenofthewhirlwind.com, and you can also sign up for our weekly prayer call and also our WOW sessions. We did a session on abuse and boundaries, and also a session on overcoming depression. And we have sessions coming up with on other pertinent issues. And then finally, we also have, in addition to that, womenofthewhirlwind.com, that's a separate website, but on Prophetic Whirlwind, if you click on study, you can take some of the courses. And if you want to support the Hebrew family in Africa, you can visit Operation Joseph on GoFundMe, and you can see who we've donated to. You can see update videos on Hebrew Nation Building or Prophetic Whirlwind, and you can make a donation to the family. We are trying to expand to give to more groups. Right now we gave to groups in 5 different African countries. And so we know our people have a lot of needs here, and we thank everyone who gave. But I believe as we bless our brothers, like Joseph blessed his brothers, though he was sold into slavery, I believe Yah is going to meet our needs and even make the awakening here stronger. Even though people say, we were sold into slavery and we lost everything, you would be shocked at the amount of ways in which African Hebrews look up to us. When I met some young Igbo boys in Abia State, they actually knew almost every camp in America. They were watching their videos, and they were talking like us and acting like us. And then they asked me, they said, "Oh, Sister Chika, why is it that there's so many Hebrew groups in America, but you all aren't united?" And so I'm going to leave, the family with that our family in Africa is watching us also to learn, just like we're learning from them. We have things we can learn from them, but they're also trying to learn from us. And when they watch, will they see something that's good? Will they see something that's worth actually imitating or learning from?
Right. Thank you for giving out your information of where we can, contact you and then go to retrieve more information, more article, more blogs. I know that I reached out to you at one time and you gave some information, and pretty much you endorsed one of the brothers in Canada I'm very familiar with. He has AbrahamsDescendants.com, and I'll purchase one of his books before you recommended him to me and the books to me, called Olenama as in Israel, so in Igbo land. So I just want to put that out there, y'all, that this information is sitting out there ready for you right at your fingertips. We got another caller on the line, Sister Only Love. You have time to take the other caller. Bring him on in, Sal.
All right. Let's go to 213-400. You're live. Go ahead and echo. All right, 213, you're going to have to lower the speaker or take this off Bluetooth if you want to speak. All right, 213, going once. Nah, it's not going to work. All right, no one over. Yeah, it's not going to work. Nobody else is standing by, though. Nobody else is standing by. Continue.
All right. To close out the show, I don't have much words to say. I was just like, class is in session when Sister Only Love starts talking. Like I said, this is a jewel, dropping jewels in our community. We yearn and we thirst for information such as this. You know, we want that confirmation, and we want to actually feel like or know that what we're reading and coming across from the scripture is actually coming to life, that it is life, that it is alive and well and kicking, and the awakening is happening, and we just have Sister Only Love here. I'm blessed to have her, so definitely want to get her back on when the book officially drops. B.A., you want to say anything before we give Sis the mic for the last closing remarks of the show? I just want to say thank you, Sister Only Love, for coming on. Praise the Most High for you, and just continue to do what you do.
Thank you for having me, Sister Shan-T and Brother B.A. I really, really appreciate it. And I just wanted to quickly say, if people want more information about Hebrews in Africa, I do have a free PDF of resources. If you go to propheticworldwind.com and sign up for the email list, I don't spam you or give away your info. I just send emails with more info about events that's going on and courses. You'll get the free PDF, and then you can continue to study for yourself. So sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's all good, sis. It's all good. I would also like to let people know that Sister Only Love has a YouTube channel as well. And I believe I'm subscribed to it. I think I've seen it before when you and it's you and what's her name? Sister Mother Phillips. I think you guys have done some work together on there as well. So, but I may have it mixed up with another YouTube channel, but I think it's the Prophetic Worldwind.
Yeah.
But from there I have nothing else, and like I would like to say, praise the Most High. The name is Only Anointed Messenger knows the Christ. Thank you, Sister Only Love. We most definitely appreciate your words and your wisdom, and we love you and we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, and I love y'all too, and thank you for all you're doing.
You're welcome.
And thank you, everyone, for listening, and praise y'all.
Praise the Most High.
That's your final remark, sis?
Yeah, all I would say, I really appreciate you all for having me on, and also for what you do on here, and I just want to thank everyone for listening. And I would just encourage everyone to read Isaiah 11:11 to 13 and to really meditate not only on the curses but on the promises we have. Yah is in gathering his people, and we all have a role to play. So with that, I'll just say shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom, much love. All right, y'all, thank you for tuning in to the second quarter. Brother Sal, let them know the upcoming shows that we have on Debate Talk for you.
All right. Once again, we appreciate you, Only Love, for coming on the program. Of course, Shan-T and VA for hosting the second quarter, bringing that information as usual. We appreciate you. Make sure you tune in this Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Debate Talk Radio. See you guys next time. Take care, and God bless.